Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Real Podcast. This is the first one in a godforsaken long time. My God, it's like January all over again. I'm not going to reference that. It's fine. Dan's starting to have a bit of a attack. It's fine. This is the show where, as ever, we're talking about all things movies, TV shows, video games, and a bunch of other things in no particular order. My name's Regan as ever, and I'm joined for the first time in a very long time. Haven't seen his face until now. It's Dan.
Evening. It's been like 3 weeks, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. I think might actually be closer to 4, to be honest, because I think we technically recorded last end of April, and then that episode went out beginning of May.
Yeah, so it's like
technically
borderline 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while.
You've been in Norway.
I've been in Norway. I had a nice little break. That was nice. And then spent just this weekend gone in the lakes for another break, because clearly I needed 2 breaks in 3 weeks. Well worth it, though. Well worth it. So, last episode, many moons ago, we were talking about Alien Isolation.
We were.
We will dip back. We will dip back into that in a second. This week we are talking about Chernobyl, the HBO miniseries. If this is the sort of podcast you enjoy, as ever, we're available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Audible, Amazon Music, Pocket Casts, and Castbox. I think I've hit all of those.
Might be an idea to just have like a little ticky box of like all the platforms are on it. So when you like go down the list, you go, okay, yeah, mention that one. I've mentioned that one. I've mentioned that one.
I could have sworn I had one for the first few, and then I just kind of gave up, to be honest, because I thought, yeah, it's fine, I can remember all that, and then took 3 weeks off. Very clever. But yes, on virtually all those, you can leave reviews, you can leave ratings, follow, all that sort of stuff. Also available on Instagram. That's like our main social media page, and both of us have Letterboxd accounts. Mine's the personal one. Dan's got one specifically for his podcast, Graveyard Chit Chat. Give that a bit of support as well, please, because literally in less than 24 hours we're recording for that one as well.
You are.
That's just what happens when you have no time. So before we dip into Chernobyl, when we were talking about Alien Isolation, I was about to say last episode.
Yeah.
Very well
last
done, Regan. I'm
4
very
weeks
rusty
ago.
at this. Dan hadn't finished the game.
No.
Ever. In fact, hadn't finished it at all by the time we spoke about it. Hence why I had to shift a lot of the script around, because someone hadn't finished it and kept it very, very quiet. Now I'm delighted to report. Well, I'm delighted to report. I don't think Dan is. He's reporting.
Reporting live from Chesley Street.
Yes. That he has indeed finished Alien Isolation.
I have.
You're gonna have to give us some thoughts.
Regan,
You're gonna have to give us some thoughts, Dan.
it has taken months of stress,
84 years,
anxiety, frustration, damaging
and that
my
was just turning
already
the damn thing on.
damaged psyche. And no, just
Never
no.
again.
I'm not going to play this game for a long time. Like, look, the last time we spoke about this, I mentioned that I just got onto the reactor mission. So when you were away
you
gallivanting
had.
in Norway, I decided, you know what, it's time to just complete this game, Dan, because it's been a fair few months. It's time to put this game away so you can focus on other games that are far less stressful. So, getting through the reactor, and it's not as bad as you actually sold it to me at first, because you were like, the reactor's like the worst mission in the game kind of thing. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna...
Well, I think initially I said the worst, and then I said the second to last one when you're having to go back on yourself in a load of flames.
Yeah.
And aliens jumping through
Windows.
That's actually the worst one.
Yes, that is definitely the worst one.
Yes.
The reactor, though...
Yes, I was right.
The first, half of it, I'm gonna say, is, pretty much a walk in the park, bar the hazard Joes. The hazard Joes. But, I mean, once you get that...
And then the nest.
No. The nest is where I was just like, oh, great.
I did not tell you about the nest.
No, you didn't. I was like, oh,
Didn't even
Reagan's
mention
just
that.
dropped me right in this, as a tea. So, yeah, I was like, well, this can't be that bad. There's just a load of hazard Joes, but, the bolt guns just takes care of them very easily. what could possibly go wrong? And then you descend into what appears to be
Don't say that.
nest. And I'm like, right, I'm sure it's nothing. I've just got to go blow the nest up. I'm sure there's nothing. Oh yeah, there's only just 2 xenomorphs and loads of facehuggers. That's not, it's nothing. Oh God, I died so many times. Oh yeah, but it's definitely the second to last mission that I was literally like, the Simpsons episode when Lisa Simpson is just rocking back and forth and the eyes are like twitching. Me,
yes,
on that mission. Because it is
I'm imagining
so
a couple
brutal.
of rage quits.
Like, it is the most tropey, cliche little mission ever. It's like you go through all this stress to turn on the generator, and you're just like, oh, I'm nearly home free. I've just got to press a button, open the door. Presses button, generator short circuits. Got to go all the way back and do it again. I'm like, Ripley, why didn't you just like check that the generator was like fueled or something? You're an engineer, for Christ's sake. But yeah, finally finishing it was just satisfying as hell. I will say though, like, I will do nightmare difficulty, but it's not going to be for a very long
You're going to do it for like about 10 minutes.
10 years.
10 years?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, if we're going to do it with like Aliens continuity, it's going to be about 57 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right. Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, I've done it. I'm not really bothered about like achievements and stuff like that because just playing the game, I've pretty much just unlocked like I think like 70% of them just by actually playing the game. I don't have to like do anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah, the only ones left I've got to get is the Nostromo ones. Don't kill any humans. I think without dying as well for some reason, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. I think it's all the ID tags.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the
that's never gonna
it's
happen.
definitely the collectibles that are probably going to be the most difficult because I bet some of them are in like really stupid places where there's no save point. So if you get
in reality, I think especially like the Nostromo ones, I think they're actually the most dickish because you can see a lot of it from like the start, but you have to go back on yourself later on. But then you don't know when you can actually do that. But otherwise, I mean, if anything, my current playthrough that I'm still doing, I completely forgot to get the health med things.
Oh God!
So I can't even get upgrades, and I'm about to hit the reactor.
Oh, that's brutal.
No health for Regan.
No, I mean, nightmare difficulty is going to be challenging, to say the least.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. But, oh my God, like, even on just playing on normal difficulty, there are definitely some infuriating moments, particularly, like, the last few missions post-reactor. I mean, the reactor's difficult enough, but post-reactor, the missions just get even more BS, to be honest.
Beautiful.
Like, for example, we all know that in later game, there's not really too many working Joes. They're replaced with hazard Joes, who are just even worse, to be honest. Because they are. I mean, the EMP mines, nothing really works against them, bar a little bolt gun. Kind of screwed there if you don't have any ammo for that. So, I'm just trying to make my way through this long corridor, trying to get to the objective. Hazard Joe spots me, and when they do the thing where they grab you and just basically punch you against the wall, it makes a sound, so guess what shows up?
Ta-da!
Thanks, Joe. You've just rang the dinner bell. Great. But yeah, it's done. Thank God.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've gone through it, it's fine. You don't have to think about it anymore for a little bit.
Like, honestly, like, when the credits came up, I'm like, it's done. It's finally done. But yeah, that's done for now. I have no intention of playing that game for a long, long time.
That's a shame because next week we're going to talk about it. No, we're not. We're fine. I'm giving you a week. No, it's fine. So yeah, that is the catch up on Alien Isolation, the long-standing epilogue to Alien Isolation on Dan's side.
Epilogue.
Yeah, Dan's epilogue.
Dan Quinn signing off.
Yeah. Damn it. But anyway, back to our scheduled programming. Eventually, 3 weeks and an epilogue to Alien Isolation. We are talking about the HBO miniseries Chernobyl. Now, this one made sense last month because we were going to do it around the time of like the anniversary of the actual event. Dan hadn't watched it yet. I was very busy, and so we didn't do it. But I think it was that coupled with The Last of Us, where it was like there's too much stuff for him to watch this month. That's like a bit unfair. So we'll just give him the dark and depressing 2 seasons worth of the same rice.
To be honest,
for like an entire month.
You were like literally selling Chernobyl to me like every get-go. You're like, you've got to watch it. You really do have to watch it. Like, don't pay attention to anything else that's labeled Chernobyl. Just watch the series.
Yeah, don't watch the thing on Netflix. It's absolute garbage. It's like classic Russian in that it's just lies. Funnily enough. I'll get to that in a little bit. There's probably a little bit to talk about. But yes, so this series came out back in 2019, so it's about 4 years old now. As I say, on HBO. Executive produced by one Craig Mazin, the man behind such acclaimed projects as Superhero Movie, Scary Movie 3 and 4.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
As well as the Hangover sequels.
How did I not click on that?
Yeah. And as I say, he also did The Last of Us. Very similar projects, as you can tell. All of them are very not the same thing at all.
No.
I mean, realistically, I think everyone was skeptical of his abilities going into a show like Chernobyl, given most of his credits are for comedies.
Yeah, definitely.
That being said, though, that didn't bother me, because I think as a comedy writer, you need to have really good dramatic timing. Say for some of the scary movies, I assume. His take on comedy actually wasn't too bad, and quite frankly, give him something different to do. You'd want someone with a good attention to time, and as I say it, it's just a case of shifting that genre around but keeping those same skills.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Craig Mazin did, because for quite a while actually on IMDb this was rated as the highest rated show of all time.
Really? Alright.
So, you know, it's alright, obviously not. If it was alright, I wouldn't be talking about it. This thing is absolutely brilliant, and it's something that I've loved.
Is it though?
You know, from like yes, it is. I'm telling you now. I already said outside of this, just because we started making a load of references to this series, just as like little jabs and stuff. I was just like, Dan, I swear to God, if you don't like this show, I'm gonna have to ask you to look inside an exposed reactor. Because I'll be mad if you don't like us, because honestly, I have not met a single person who doesn't like this show.
Yeah.
So rather than just kicking off with my thoughts, because I've already said it's brilliant, and as you've jokingly said, I pitched this to you every other Tuesday.
Yeah, pretty much, to be honest.
General thoughts from Dan. My every single limb is crossed.
Oh, he looks so tense. I can't even. Like, he's smiling, but behind that smile is like
it's
this
like the
absolute
Evil Dead
dread.
all over again.
Yeah,
except
much
it's
is.
on the other side now.
Yeah, pretty much is, to be honest. Like, absolute dread. He's sweating now. Oh god.
Sorry, it's the radiation. It's
All
getting
right,
really,
so
really hot.
I watched this while Regan was away gallivanting in Norway. Via
sunburned.
Prime, because it was on sale. Like, I got the entire series for under a tenner, so I thought, oh, might as well.
Bargain.
You know, because I was originally going to do The Last of Us, but I thought, well, it's relatively new, it's still pretty expensive, so I'll just go with Chernobyl instead, because I really felt like watching it, because I was a bit bored with, like, just getting through my watch list for this year, so I was just like, I kind of just want to watch a series, you know, gives me a bit of preparation for the Chernobyl episode. 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Right.
Editing, this is going to be a nightmare, because I'm like, do I just keep in these bits where he's just like leaving us on edge? Yes, I do.
So,
For comedic purposes.
you know, as a horror fan,
I like things that are better than this.
you know, most of my taste comes in the form of, like, fictional characters, I mean, Ghostface, Michael Myers,
Dyatlov.
Oh, you, for God's sake, you really had to go there. You really had to go there. Pinheads, the Cenobites, a list of fictional characters. But this is a real life horror. This happened. And honestly, this has got to be the best series I have ever watched.
Thank fuck.
When we did the Mandalorian season 3?
We did.
So with that, I mean, like 8 episodes or something, that is? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I pretty much just did that over like the course of a week. So I was like, I'll watch 2 episodes here. I'll watch like maybe 1 tomorrow.
You watched the entire thing in one day, didn't you?
I did.
Yes,
Honestly,
you did. That is the way you do it.
I did not intend to, but it was just literally that first episode that grabbed me. I was like, I've got to watch another episode. I was like, I'll just watch one more, and then by 11 o'clock at night, it was the last episode. I'm like, I just got to finish it now, But yeah, seriously, this was like the best series I've ever watched. Period.
That's so. Thank God.
But you know what it is like? It's something that isn't necessarily horror film related. It absolutely could be from the way it's done. Like,
oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, like episode 3 alone. That is the body horror one, and even like
3 and
episode
4.
1, yeah, 3. Yeah, 4 is
Jesus. I tell you what, that caught
I mean, look,
me.
we're not. Yeah, we're not going to do like beat by beat breakdowns of every single episode because I've not got the time to do that.
That would be like a 7-hour-long episode.
Or it'll just be it'll just be like the old ones we did of Doctor Who, which I do wish we'd done that more generally than subjecting Dan to points on every single episode. That was cruel like that. But no, I'm very much the same as you. I mean, like Doctor Who is my favourite series, but I think Chernobyl is the best show I think I've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
it's like. It's funny how last year I think we spoke about adaptations and stuff, and I think I mentioned Bates Motel. Oh no, sorry, prequels.
Yeah, because you were on about Bates Motel with Vera Farmiga, I believe it is.
Yes, and I absolutely adored that show.
That.
You do, to be honest. But Chernobyl was something else. But like you, I watched it all in one day. It was just me, my dad flicking through channels, and I'm like, oh. Chernobyl's now a thing because I think it had just finished in the US. I don't think it was over in the UK.
Yeah.
So like, okay, give episode 1 a watch. We were there for the entire afternoon, and we barely said a thing. We just watched it, full stop.
Yeah.
Which I never, because you know me, I don't binge. I really don't.
Like I didn't even intend to, especially with series as well. Like I mean, even when we've done Doctor Who ones, like I watched like a couple episodes and then I'm like, ugh, I'm bored of it now. This is totally different. I mean, the only other series that I think came close was something like Midnight Mass, which is I think it's a Netflix series about vampires and stuff like that. I really enjoyed it, but this just absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark with this. Like, this was so good.
Yeah, it's easily one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. It's like, as we say, it's utterly engrossed in this world. You spend so much time being terrified of something you can't even see.
Yeah.
And that's even away from the actual disaster. Even in episode 5, you're terrified because it's a different form of horror, frankly. But most importantly, and this is something I didn't really expect to, because I had like passing knowledge of the actual Chernobyl disaster. I didn't know how it actually happened, as you find out in this series, which is so good. Frankly,
to be honest, I'm glad that I went into Chernobyl with very little sort of knowledge about what happened. I mean, everybody sort of knows the Chernobyl instance, but for my knowledge, and I'm sure for many other people's knowledge, it was basically just something went wrong with a reactor, but there is so much more to it than just that. And when you actually find out, it's mind-blowing. Yeah,
you begin to downright hate certain characters, even those you didn't expect to.
Oh yeah,
like for their actions and choices, and that's kind of the point. There's only a few characters you can actually call likable in this world, where truth can get you killed.
Oh yeah.
And lies will do so much worse. I mean, obviously, the disaster itself is absolutely horrifying. And once you learn the truth, it's even more so.
I think it's still like the worst
nuts.
nuclear disaster in history.
Yeah, I think the closest is
the Hiroshima
2011
plant,
with Fukushima.
Fukushima, that's it, yeah.
Like, so much could have been avoided if people were just a little bit more truthful. But as Valery Legazov says, by the end, that's the final gift of Chernobyl. The lies made the whole situation even worse, and he risks his own life to expose that. Like, it honestly could have just focused exclusively on the disaster itself, which one film already did do that, like, years later.
Yeah.
And it didn't work at all. But it puts in the heavy lifting and it comes out swinging. And, you know, we're actually in agreement. Get in. Thank God.
There's definitely no filter on this, I mean, like, at all. Like, this thing is out for truth. Like, it really doesn't care, like, if this is going to offend the people who are responsible for this. Like, you know, I imagine that, like, well, obviously, like, the other one that you mentioned, like, the strictly Russian one, they're going to keep it quite tame. Because at the end of the day, you know, this was something that happened in Soviet Russia. You know?
Yeah. I'll talk about it now before we actually delve into the series properly, because we will. That one was Chernobyl Abyss, or Chernobyl 1986. It depends on... they've renamed it a couple of times. It is streaming on Netflix. It's a 2-hour, 20-minute Russian action film based on the events of Chernobyl, but is very fictionalized.
Yeah.
And follows a single firefighter who was one of the first responders, who saves a bunch of people. There's explosions, there's a load of other stuff. It's very Michael Bay-esque, to be honest. That's how blunt it is.
Right.
With its, like... With like, its politics. But it's interesting because I think the Russian reaction to the series was actually not overwhelmingly negative. It was actually just quite mixed, which I thought that's quite restrained. I'm saying that now in 2023.
Yeah.
That's a bit awkward. I mean, this series as a whole is still, like, so relevant, despite being set in the 80s.
Oh, it is.
Like,
it's unbelievably relative.
It's scary how similar it is now.
Because nothing's truly changed. I mean, cover-ups and stuff are still existent. So nothing's really changed.
But yeah, I thought that film was... I mean, bar the fact that it's not very accurate to reality, it's still just awful, frankly. But back to the HBO series. So, in terms of the three leads, 2 of them are based on actual people, one isn't. As we learn in the end credits, we've got Jared Harris as Valery Legazov, who's brought in by the Soviets to provide advice on the situation at Chernobyl.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Stellan Skarsgård as Boris Shabina, who's one of the politicians. He's a committed Soviet politician until he realizes just
committed
how
communist
bad things are. And you've also got Emily Watson as Ulana Comyuk, a composite character. So she's created exclusively for the series, who's based on a variety of scientists who were with Legazov in real life during the actual events. Given there were so many, it's a 5-episode series. We'll put them into one character.
Yeah.
Actually, a really clever idea, because it really streamlines this and keeps just, like...
You're not I think if you did with, like, 5 or 6 different people based on real life, it would be pretty hard to take in all the information.
Oh, definitely. I mean, with Emily Watson in particular, I think she's absolutely terrific in the series for sure. As I say, I thought it was a really clever idea, just keeping it to one character instead of, like, 20 or 30. It's interesting how all 3 characters represent a different section of Soviet society. So you've got Legazov, who's already questioning things like left, right, and centre. He's like a character that doesn't fit in at all.
Oh yeah, like he's kind of the rebellion in a Soviet Union. Really, you know, he sees the truth for what it is.
Yeah, you've got Shabina, as I say, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who, when he's introduced in episode 2, he's presented almost like an antagonist. Very much so, like him and Legazov are constantly at odds. And then by the end, he actually ends up becoming one of the best characters in the entire show.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's certain moments with him that are just phenomenal. And, you know, I think his arc across the entire series is easily the best. Then, as I say, you've got Comyuk, who has kind of got the balance. Like, she's noticed the corruption pretty much immediately, and she's trying to sort of strip it away, sort of like really, really slowly, really, really quietly. Whereas what the story actually needed was a pretty blunt instrument. In the case with episode 5, when they're basically just scolded for, yeah, this is actually your fault. It isn't their fault. It isn't even Dyatlov's fault. It's your fault. And, well, death wasn't enough. You lose a hell of a lot more. As I say, there's a lot of characters in this show, but it does a really good job at switching between them and giving them room to grow and evolve.
For sure.
Like, in particular with that, because, I mean, even with our first episode, there is not a main character at all. It's very much
you're
an
definitely
ensemble.
second guessing as to who is actually going to be the lead, because, again, it's so, like, with that particular first episode, as I say, you're kind of guessing, well, who is going to be the main character. And then when you progress throughout the series, like, oh, okay, we're actually starting to see who is the main character now. So Dyatlov, especially. But, I mean, that first episode, as I say, like, it just had me, like, absolutely enthralled, Regan. Like, I was like, I've got to watch another episode.
It's one of the most... Oh, yeah, it's one of the most riveting episodes I think I've ever seen of anything. It's, like, one of the best opening episodes of anything ever, if not the best. It's phenomenal. And it's funny because it actually opens up with a trope that I actually really hate, and that's of seeing a character way past everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And then we get to see what led them to it. Now, I usually get really, like, sort of nitty-gritty with that. Like, I don't like that, because half the time I'm like, oh, emotionally, I'm not there. But I think with Chernobyl, it was different, especially because even just the name, you know, like, okay, this is some big stuff that's going to make Legazov say all this stuff and then just hang himself in the opening scene.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, okay, I actually want to see what led him to this. And it's absolutely rewarding.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And then by the end of episode 5, it doesn't just suddenly cut back to that opening scene, because it doesn't need to.
It's definitely one of the more, I mean, particularly with me, I've seen films that have that kind of technique to it. Like, you have, like, like, you know, the character basically killing themselves, or, like, you know, it's something creepy, but you don't actually see it until the end of the film, but it gives you, like, a hint of it in the beginning. I don't really like it, but for this, it's the very few of exceptions I'll make for, like, right, I need to see what actually happened to make this guy do this. I need to find out.
Yeah, definitely. And even then, the open episode is still really restrained. Like, because it does open after that with the reactor core exploding.
Yeah.
But it's from far away. And it's from the perspective of
like townsfolk
of
and
Jesse Buckley's character. Yeah, and I thought that's genius. That's so much better, because any other, like, writer or director or anyone
would want to just do it
would
quick,
probably want
like,
to overindulge. Yeah, and they do that in episode 5, but that's because it's led to that. You've earned the right to show it as massive as it is, because now we know what's actually led to it.
Like, the overall
from the
arc
perspective
of just the story of how it progresses, it's great. Because, again, like, you know, you get some people who basically just want to, like, cut out the middleman and just, you know, skip that, like, first episode and just dive straight into, like, the reactor exploding, etc. You'd want to just get to the juicy stuff straight away, but with this, I really like how it just eases you into it, and each episode just gets more and more tense every time.
Oh, definitely. I mean, episode 1 already has a lot of that, and again, it's from stuff that we can't even see, just the way things are framed, like the chaos of it all. Even something as simple as people standing on a bridge, like that scene, just got me. Like, you can see, like, little flecks of dust in the air just falling on them, because they have no idea, and of course they wouldn't. They're in like a state where they're told, no, it's absolutely fine, there's nothing wrong at all. And it's awful, especially because I mean, there's been a bit of a dispute as to whether or not that sequence ever actually happened, like the whole Bridge of Death thing, as has now been coined, even in the actual score. That track's referred to as Bridge of Death. There's no proper account as to whether or not that was actually a thing.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, after I finished the series, I was really, like, intrigued and just read about it some more, and yeah, I did see that like it was quite disputed, but I believe that people were like on that bridge. I don't think like as many as the series emphasizes, but the people who were, because it's a natural human instinct when you see something like that, you're going to want to see what the fuss is all about.
Yeah.
But of course, they don't know what the hell has happened.
Well, exactly, no one knows. I think beyond our core three, the engineers, it's the Ignatenkos, Vasily, the firefighter, and Ludmilla, his wife, where we pay a lot of attention with them, in particular with Vasily, because he's one of the first responders to the actual event, and he has no idea. And you can even see, as that sequence goes on, you can see him just like looking and just like pausing at this.
Yeah, something's
off,
not right.
but I can't say that something's off because someone's going to tell us to shut up, essentially. But even in its face, you can see it getting redder and redder, and it's just not because of like heat. Well, it is, but it's the radiation. Even he notices the bits of graphite.
Yeah, because then you get another first responder picking up a bit of graphite. Obviously, it's.
And within seconds it melts through, as if it's from like a xenomorph or something.
Oh yeah, it's like the acid, like the acid for blood, like dripping down and just melting through everything. But that's basically what it would do because it's that hot.
Yeah, sticking with those two characters in particular, their stuff is tied up come episode 3, but their stuff is honestly some of the most tragic. With Ludmilla in particular, she ends up being a character that you do kind of hate, but it's a different kind of hate. It's not a case of, I don't like this character. It's a fact of, you're making such horrible decisions, and you've got no idea of the consequences, and it properly gets you mad. And it's weird, because I think any other series that did something similar to that, you just hate the character full stop. Like,
yeah, I see what you mean about
these characters have no idea.
Particularly with episode 3, again, this is basically where they're still kind of figuring out what's going on, and she's very like close contact with the husband. Obviously her husband is severely burned and infected from radiation poisoning, and the consequence of that is obviously she is pregnant. Not gonna end well.
Yeah, she keeps that. She keeps that quiet from everyone, so that's like another reason to get really, really angry. But again, if you're told constantly from some people, no, it's fine, they're okay. But it even does that, where like it looks like he is actually going to make a recovery. Like it gets to the beginning of episode 3 and he's like smoking, he's playing cards with his friends. There's something very similar. I think there was I forget the guy's name, but there was a man, I think in 1999, who was working at a power plant in Japan, who got like a lethal dose of radiation. And for a little bit he was like vomiting and everything, and then for a good few days he was fine.
Yeah,
it's like it just vanished.
That's the horrifying
and then it
thing
flared up
about
horrifically.
Radiation poisoning. It's because you make a temporary recovery, but it's actually like doing more harm than it is good. You're not recovering, you're just getting sicker, which is absolutely horrifying.
There's a reason why I think I had this as an honourable mention on your podcast when it came to scary stuff. Because I don't think I actually put this on anything because I thought I can't do it because it's a miniseries. But if I could, I would have done, because episode 3 in particular. I'm not gonna lie, I made the mistake of making tea when it came to episode 3 because obviously I had no idea.
Do you know what it is? I think I actually had a bloody, being British, we obviously have frigging cups of tea every like half an hour.
Yeah, we do. Just like, and you're just like.
So obviously, when
when
this poor guy is getting the now pretty much in the dying state of this disease, and you see his flesh just start falling off and melting away, I was just like, yep, I'm just gonna let that cool for a little bit.
Yeah, I think seeing that when he's behind the covers and Ludmilla's sneaking in to talk to him, that's just. My jaw just dropped.
Oh yeah,
and that's from a variety of things, but also the makeup for that,
impeccable. Absolutely,
I've never seen anything like that,
like
ever.
I really want to know who did the makeup and stuff for this, because it's absolutely tremendous. Like, you've captured the absolute horror of radiation poisoning and just like a variety of, I think, like the close-up one of like the guy's face, and you just see like all the blisters and stuff. I'm like, that is something out of a goddamn horror film. Like,
there's like 4 different versions of it. So you have Ignatenko was easily the worst. You've got the really young,
the 25 top
members
something.
Yeah,
I can't quite remember his name, but 25, like
where it's still obviously really horrible. And then you've got Akimov, who we never actually see.
Yeah.
Because in reality, his face is gone. And you just had to thinking, I'm really glad you didn't make me see that, because I wouldn't be able to take it. And then you've got someone like Dyatlov, who's gotten off actually alright, given everything. His hair's just going a bit white and is kind of vanishing. But even that, like 4 different stages is just, like, as I say, the makeup is just absolutely remarkable. Could not fault it at all. And that's really like one of the only times where I think we get to see the dangers so physically, whereas every other time it's very, like, we sort of guess it. Like,
well, I think you could even like say that, like, you know, even like trying to, well, basically the secrecy of trying to cover up the operation, and they think, well, it's the fire that's the problem. They don't see the radiation as the problem, which is the problem because it's invisible. That's the issue. It's the invisible killer.
There's a fair few instances, I think, in episode 2 in particular, where you've got the characters at the event now, like they're on the ground talking, and you can just see in the background the smoke just billowing up into the sky, and it's essentially like a monster that's just constantly there.
Oh yeah.
Just constantly reminding you. But as I say, the series does such a good job with like the fear factor, in particular, like Christ Almighty, with like the Geiger counters. End of episode 2.
Oh.
When you've got the 3 liquidators going in to clear up the water, and then the lights go out, and all you hear is just the Geiger counter screaming. Like, I'm sorry, that's like the most horrifying sound on the planet.
It is, because, like, you know, that I think the
it's
matter's worse, the fact that
awful.
These are like really like, well, from what I recall from the series, these are like not very accurate Geiger counters. They only go up to like a certain like level, whereas actually in reality it was a lot higher.
It became a meme, I think, after the series came out, where it's like 3.6 Rontgen, not great, not terrible.
Oh yeah, they do mention that quite a bit, like, you know.
Yeah, they did. In fact, I'm afraid they referenced it twice, and like, you guys are reading off a script. I mean, obviously, because you're actors, but these people might as well be reading off a script. Because like, just the level of corruption that they've got, even when you get to episode 4, even taking out the stuff with the taking out of the animals, that's just really hard to watch. You've got 2 instances where I think it's even scary. There's one where Stellan Skarsgård acts the hell out of everything when he realizes that the robot that the Germans have sent over to help clear the roof, the Soviets downplayed how much radiation was there, and it dies immediately.
Yeah.
And he just screams and pulls off the phone and everything, and he's like, need to get a new phone.
Yeah, because it's like some poor like Russian like soldier just standing there. He's like, we need a new phone.
Like,
and he just starts like picking up the remnants of the phone. I'm like, oh my god. Yeah, it was definitely that scene where I thought, oh, you bastards. Like, because it is absolutely like the secrecy behind this whole event was shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Oh, for sure. I think as well, possibly my favourite scene in the entire show, and I think it's the same for a lot of other people, is from episode 4. And it's the like 90 seconds one take of the people on the roof shoveling off all like the debris and stuff.
Oh yeah, when they have
the guy counter is
I think it's like 90
off.
seconds to basically go in and out and shovel the radioactive graphite off, but you only have 90 seconds to do it, because if you're out any longer, you're going to be exposed to, what's it called, acute radiation syndrome.
Yeah, and to think that is a thing that actually happened. There is footage of it, and they used, I mean, there's so much old footage from that entire event that they use as reference, and that in particular was one of them, because it is identical. And to see that and you think, oh, that's horrifying. Look at the original footage, and it's like, that's even like...
Yeah.
people did that. There's so much that they use. Like, even there's a moment in episode 2 where there's helicopters dumping sand and stuff into the exposed core, and then one of them splits off and falls down.
Yeah, because of the heat from it basically melts through the rotors of the helicopter. It just plummets like a lead balloon.
Yeah, that actually happened. I mean, granted, the timeline is a bit different. I mean, that actually happened weeks later, but it still happened, and it's just mental to watch. There's like, the show doesn't need to dramatize too much because the entire event doesn't need to be. It's already mental enough. You need to do like very little. Even when it gets to episode 5, when most of it's in a courtroom.
But you know what it is? So
like,
it's absolutely fine because you're just wanting like resolution. Really, you're really like pondering for like, I really hope this guy wins. Like, you're absolutely in that state. But for me, as I say, like, every episode just got that little bit more intense, and then I got to episode 4.
Yeah, to be honest, I think until I rewatched it again recently, which I did the same as you, I just watched the entire series in one sitting. For a long time, episode 4 I think was the weakest. But to be honest, I mean, of the 5, maybe, but even still, to be the weakest in one of the best things ever made, and it's still really damn good, even if it is really difficult to watch.
You see, like, I was really in the opinion that this has got to be like dramaticized, because basically it involves the Soviets going out with sort of improvised lead armor on to basically, you know, protect them against testicular cancer, which was a real factor because, you know, radiation, cancer, very close links.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's no way on earth this happened in real life. Yeah, it did actually happen. So what had happened is the Soviets decided that, well, because this is like the first major nuclear accident of like all time. You know, Hiroshima was bad enough, but this is like a whole new level. So radiation infects everything living and static. Once it gets on something, very difficult.
Including the animals.
Yes, indeed. So you basically get these death squads sent into Pripyat to basically execute domestic animals because they have the risk of basically escaping and spreading the radiation. So I can't even emphasize how much my jaw dropped. Like, I was sat there like what? And you have like Barry Keoghan, this soldier who's basically just been sent to this place, joins the death squad, and he has no idea what he's getting into. And it's absolutely harrowing.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it is kind of funny when you think about it, because the actor's Barry Keoghan, who is going to be going on to play Joker in the Batman Part 2, and you're like, you went from a sadistic monster to a sadistic monster. That's really weird. It's like, I wasn't expecting that. But no, that sequence, I mean, obviously they keep a lot of the animal stuff off,
which I'm like, pleased to do,
naturally.
But it's kind of left to your imagination that this is actually happening.
Yeah, because you don't need to see it to like really feel it. Like you're dealing with animals getting killed. Like, you don't need to show it, you just need to feel it, and my god, do you feel it? Yeah. Because it's like you see it. I mean, even Legazo says in episode 2 when they're like saying, well, can you tell us what we actually need to do to fix this? And he's like, we're talking about something that has never happened on this earth. Like, what the hell do you expect me to do? And it's awful. But I still think the best line from this entire show is in that final episode when the rest of the Soviets are starting to go back on Legazov, when he's saying, no, actually, this happened because you kept things quiet. They didn't know about it. And like, are you really going to start blaming us? And he's like, every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is paid. That's how an RBMK reactor core explodes. Lies. It's not button, it's not radiation, no, it's just lies. And even when I rewrote my review for Chernobyl on Letterboxd, shameless link in the description below, I open with the end of that line, like, that's how an RBMK reactor core explodes, because that just sets everything. That just tells you everything about the show. It's not about, like, what physically happened, what emotion happened. No, it's just lies. all of it. Like, it could have been avoided if they didn't lie.
Yeah.
And it's, again, it infuriates you.
Oh yeah, because
especially
if they actually just told the truth, you could have thought, well, could so much death and possible death in the future have been prevented? Like,
oh, definitely, yeah.
It definitely has that ability to make you feel like angry. Like I thought, oh my god, like this is horrible. I mean, when he's just standing there, and you've got all these like really like high official Soviet members. I mean, like even the judges, like watch what you're saying about going against your country, etc. So it's like they're in belief that they've done like no wrong at all. It's the people who are in the plant that are responsible.
Yeah, and I think even when it comes to episode 3, and then you find out that guy's 25, and you start there thinking, okay, there's something else going on, because there's no way you'd actually have a 25-year-old basically being the head of this thing, because that's just batty.
Yeah, I think like the 25-year-old had only like been working there for like months as well. Like he had no experience of dealing with something like that.
And even in episode 5, we see he gets taken there at the very last minute, and he's got no idea. He's like, I've got no idea what I'm doing at all. And obviously with Dyatlov in particular, he's easily like one of the most unlikable characters in the entire show.
I mean, even from the get-go, he's just an absolute bastard. Like,
I mean, rest in peace, Paul Ritter for one. Like he passed away like last year or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Year before. And I was like, oh, that's just awful. Because, yeah, I mean, he's playing an absolutely horrible character, but he's brilliant.
Does it
like,
so well.
He really is.
Exceptionally well.
I mean, as does everyone. I mean, there's a lot of, like, really great guest actors involved in this. It's actually funny. It took me until this rewatch to realise the head of the committee that they keep on cutting back to, who's... he's got sort of like the skin sort of like lesion on his on the side of his head. The actor who plays him is David Densick, who actually plays the Russian scientist in No Time to Die that they're all trying to find.
Oh,
and I'm sat there thinking, no, you're not. There's no, and it is. He's just under a lot of prosthetics and stuff. I'm like, this is like Colin Farrell as the Penguin levels of prosthetics, because that's not you. At all.
You see, because there's just so many people in, you don't really take notice of like what they're in. You're just so like enthralled by what's going on.
One of them is Sam Troughton, I think, is actually Akimov, actually, who is Patrick Troughton's grandson as well, which I thought, oh, that's nice. Another Doctor Who thing in Chernobyl, get in. There will always be a Doctor Who reference.
Always.
It's just a rule. Always. But yeah, there's just so many things that I absolutely adore with the show. The score,
that's
like, oh my god!
I don't think I've honestly listened to such a great score like that. Like, it is so brilliant. Like, words are not enough for this. Like, you have to listen to the score.
Yeah, so this is composed by Hilda Gudnadottir, which I've absolutely butchered.
Oh, well, you don't butcher names of as badly as that too, so it's fine.
No, I don't.
No, you've pronounced all these Russian names with flying colours. Me, no.
Yeah. She also did the score for Joker, and you can tell, because in reality she actually did these... She actually flicked between them both at the same time, doing Chernobyl and Joker, and to be honest, you can tell. That's no disrespect to any of these, but when you look at the behind the scenes, most of the music actually comes from sounds from an actual
like the Foley sounds from the
new
reactors and stuff.
Like, that is genius,
next level,
absolutely
absolutely
genius.
Next level.
Oh yeah. I mean, visually as well. I mean, the series is absolutely impeccably shot. This is done by Johan Renck, who's done a lot of TV stuff. I think he was due to do a science fiction film at some point this year.
There's so many like shots in that film that just set the feel for it. And I think one of the best has got to be when like all these like basically the people who succumb to the radiation die, and the brutal side of that is you can't even have like personal time with them because they're still radioactive even in death. So they're sealed in a wooden coffin. That is then put in a metal sarcophagus.
Oh, that is...
And then it's lowered into the ground, and it's filled with concrete. I just thought, oh my god. And like the way that's shot, and like the sort of like the high angle of just seeing like the coffins being lowered in, and then the cement coming in, and you get like the shot of I can't remember his name, the firefighter, his wife, and she's just stood there just in utter disbelief of what she's saying, and it just sets it, like absolutely sets it. It's harrowing.
Oh yeah, I think actually one of them. I mean, one of my other favourite moments, I think, is, I mean, I forget if it's episode 2 or 3, but it's when Legazov's looking out of a hotel window looking over, like, Chernobyl, and Shabina comes in and is like, yep, it's looking like it's all sorted, and Legazov's like, yeah, I'm just thinking about the fact we're going to be dead in 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
And Shabina, at first, looks really angry, because he's, you know, like, he's, like, being spoken down to, and then he just looks silent. He's just like
the realization hits him.
That's going to be it, is it? And of course we get the end credits, which do that classic thing that's mostly in biopics and stuff, where it gives like little extra bits of info after the stories end, and you see it a lot in like the music stuff. So you see more about what is actually real, what's been changed, and you see that like Shabina kept on going until like the late 80s, but I think the bit that really got me was the very end, where it said that the official death count for the Chernobyl disaster is potentially in the thousands. The Soviet Union's one has remained the same.
Yeah, it's totally like unchanged. It's like
76.
30 odd.
Or 30 something, and you're just like...
But there's so much
disgusted.
more to it, yeah. So much more to it. Again, the secrecy and the cover-up that was involved in this, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible, you know, like...
Oh, for sure.
You look at, like, all the fictional horror stuff, and you're like, oh, I can't imagine that ever happening to me. And then you look at a real-life event like Chernobyl, and you think, that is, like, blatantly a horror story in real life. That is real horror. This happened.
Definitely. And like I said, it didn't have to do much to change. I mean, even because I listened to the Chernobyl podcast, like between episodes, that Craig Mazin did to accompany each episode, where he delved into like his ideas behind this, what changed, what didn't, and he spoke a lot about how, as I say, you don't need to change much, because the fact that this even happened is ludicrous enough.
Oh yeah.
So you don't need to change it. It's like the perfect thing to adapt. But it's also done really respectfully as well. Don't try and turn it into something it's not. What it essentially is, and, you know, it's not just like a thriller or like a drama. It's a tragedy.
Oh yeah,
because
but in no way it exploits
everyone loses,
like at all. In no way does it. Because nobody
Every
wins in that
person
situation.
Loses, even the ones
Everybody
that
loses.
survive.
Like the ones who survive are literally like they haven't won anything.
Like, even when it says in... Because you hear in episode 4 that the child that Ludmilla was pregnant with, she did give birth to it, but then was dead within hours, because in, like, a bizarre sort of miracle...
Like, it absorbed
any
most of the radiation,
that she'd gotten from her husband was absorbed by the kid. And you're just like, nah.
Yeah.
Nah. And even then you hear that, she did actually give birth again couple of years later and is living in Moscow, and you're like, you've still lost.
Yeah, you
really have, because it's like the risk now of even having a kid in that. Obviously with Legazov, as I say, it opens with the suicide, and that did happen. He did kill himself 2 years to the date of the actual event. There is some things changed with that. I believe he didn't do audio recordings. I think he just made a load of like written notes and stuff that he then put to one side that people found. But I think that was done mostly just to facilitate it being like a visual thing. So I thought that's actually a good call, as opposed to just a load of writing. You've even got like Dyatlov that passes away a couple of years after everything. He's locked up in prison. There's just so much that happens even after the facts. Like, even a 6th episode wouldn't have done it justice.
Oh,
like,
no.
You would still need more, because there's so
much
I think
to
when I
unpack
was
with
initially
it,
watching it...
For 5 episodes, it just does a terrific job. I mean, like, it definitely covers most of the ground, but then again, like, there always is going to be stuff that isn't mentioned in things like this. But then again, I suppose that's what, like, podcasters and stuff like that cover.
Yeah, certainly. And as I say, there's just so much drama in that entire instance. And to think as well, even in episode 2, we get told that if they can't get the water out of the core, it's going to explode again, and it's going to be even bigger. And you're like, how could you possibly get this even worse?
Yeah.
And you sat there thinking, we got that actual explosion in real life. We were this close to getting a second. Like...
It's
I don't
the way
know if
it's
we'd
just
even be
executed
here.
as well. It's not like you basically we're going to need volunteers, but you're not going to volunteer. You're going to do this because you don't have a choice, really.
Yeah, and it's by the end, even then, like the people that do like choose to do this, they are doing it for their country, for the people, and I'm like, that's so patriotic. And even though like this series really doesn't, I mean, it doesn't condone patriotism.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been a fan of that anyway. But you feel a great sense of respect for the ones that do actually choose. Like, you know what, just sod it. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's one life or millions.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Which
like
one are you gonna choose?
like the miners as well. Like when they basically come to dig and they basically just strip off because they're like, well, they're not going to protect us. We might as well just do it as we are.
But they are going to keep the hats.
Yeah. There's like nothing else but the hats and boots.
You gotta love how like most of the miners as well are northerners.
Yeah.
And like, I'm taking that really personally because the north here is obviously like really big when it comes to like mining and stuff, and you're just like, funny. Very, very funny.
Yeah, you know, we have a very rich heritage of coal mining, etc. But like, I saw this, I was like, wow. Okay then.
Yeah. Wasn't expecting that. There is actual nudity in this show, and I was not expecting
there's a lot of willies.
Oh, there's a few.
But yeah, like seriously
Questions
though, like it's how blunt it actually is, and like, you know, because again, this is like a disaster that they had never ever experienced. This is a first time thing, so it's no wonder things are quite weird. I mean, like, you send in people with 90 seconds to basically just push rubble off because of robot breaks because of the amount of radiation that's up there. Then you get miners who basically just have to sacrifice their own health for the good of the Soviet Union and for the people, because that's what, you know, that was about at that time. You know, it was for the people. You do things for the people. So you're risking your own life for the people, which is mental, really. And it's just, I think what shocks me the most is this actually happened. Like, this event happened. And particularly with episode 5, I love the cutbacks to... I'm not going to bother pronouncing the name.
Event.
But basically when
fine.
he's reiterating through the events of, like, everything that went on in the reactor, like, with the little, like, cards on the... whatever majiggy you call it.
Oh, on, like, the board.
Yeah. And then you get, like, the cutbacks to, like, the reactor rods just going up and down like crazy, and then, like, everything just going into shutdown was just, like, intriguing. And it just works so well because you just feel that little bit more annoyed at Dyatlov, because realistically, he brought aboard a 25-year-old and he just basically sentenced a 25-year-old to death.
Yeah, essentially. Though I do actually like as well how like it simplifies how nuclear reactions work.
Oh yeah, in no way does it like overwhelm you with like nerdy stuff like at all.
No,
it keeps it pretty simple.
Yeah, to the point where I think I jokingly call myself like an expert on on nuclear power and stuff, because I'm like, well, Chernobyl taught me.
Yeah.
Jared Harris taught me.
Jared Harris taught me.
And now I know. But he does like make it really simple, especially with like the red and blue cards. Like, this is what happens, this is the effect. This is what happens, this is the effect. You remove this one, it's going to remove that. keeps it very, very simple, because it needs to be, because they need to be told as bluntly as possible. Yeah, this happened. Oh yeah, it's your fault. It's actually your fault.
Which I still really love, because it's just you just sense the atmosphere in that courtroom the moment he says that, and you just get these really high up officials who are like, you better watch your tongue.
Yeah, just like, don't you dare blame us, because it wasn't actually us. And you're like, well, it was.
It's like, because they try to twist the words, really. It's like you're trying to blame, like, Soviet Union, essentially. You're basically just blaming the entirety of Russia for this mistake. Which is, it's scary, you know, because a lot of the conspiracy and secrets and lies behind it all, it just makes it that much more horrifying.
Yeah.
Because, again, nobody wins.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. Like, no one won from this. Like, anyone that claimed that they did, they really didn't. Everyone lost. And it's just like the perfect version of a tragedy, because everyone loses something.
And I think the interesting thing, particularly with the ending, I think, you know, when you get, like, obviously, with what most, like, true documentaries do, when you get, like, little biopics with information, I think it's, I don't know how far it is, but it basically says, like, how long Pripyat will be inhabited for. And, like, the ground radiation, and the last time I looked it up, was, like, 20,000 years. Which is, like...
Yeah, it has a half-life of 25,000 years.
Which is just insane. Like, this isn't going to be within, like, our lifetime, or kids' lifetime.
Just as, like, a really random, like, little final note before we wrap things up. I mean, as I said, this show came out in 2019. I was very much aware of the Chernobyl thing. It was interesting that there was an episode... I mean, I know you never watched it, annoyingly. There was an episode of... Back in 2014, there was an episode of Top Gear where they did, like, hatchbacks through Ukraine.
Right.
Because they labelled it as really, really dull. And what was dubbed the final challenge was to be given a certain amount of fuel in the car to get from one end of this place to the other. And the final points was Chernobyl.
Right.
So the trick was to run out before you got there, because if you didn't, you would have to drive through.
Yeah.
And even that is terrifying.
Because it's like really, a horror... Like, you just hear the name Chernobyl, and you just think of the horror.
Like, well, poo.
Yeah, you just think of, like, everything bad. Like, there's not one good thing. You think of the horror.
And even bloody Top Gear can make it scary. Like, I mean, like, eventually Clarkson and May are the ones that end up going through. They have to seal up the cars. They've got Geiger counters that are constantly... I mean, even, like, the little bits when it's just flickering a little bit, you're just like, no. And then, like, they're driving along and you see the remains of the reactor in the background, and it's just... Nah.
Yeah.
No. Absolutely not. It's funny that like a car show can make Chernobyl scary in the same way that HBO can.
Like a car show of all
again,
things.
It's very easy. Very, very easy, because it's just horrifying.
Yeah.
But as I say, going back to the very beginning, I'm just really glad that we're both on the same page with this. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty certain you were gonna like this.
Oh yeah, like...
I didn't expect you to turn around and say exactly what I said, where it's like, this is like the greatest show I've ever seen.
No, like, seriously, honestly, Regan, this has got to be, like, the most... Like, as somebody who just lives on horror films, you don't get more horrific than this, because this is real. Where does
this rank in terms of, like, scariest stuff? I mean, would you call it scary, or is it just...
Like, I'd call it scary for the fact that this happened. Like, you can't, like, you know, obviously this is, like, 1986 when this event happened, but it's still relevant today, which is the somewhat scary part, because nuclear stuff terrifies me. Like, you know, we have, like, nuclear reactors doing this, so I'm just thinking to myself, like, you've got, you know, the governments and all this assure you that, you know, there's new implications in place, so I'm just like, I don't believe that for 1 second.
Yeah, I'm not convinced.
Like, I'm not convinced at all.
So if we were to randomly, like, hark back to the episode of Graveyard Chit Chat where we talked about the scariest things that we'd seen, would this have been in your top 5?
Oh yeah, totally.
If you were counting miniseries.
Totally.
Yeah.
Would have been like the first.
Which number?
Like at 1.
Just out of curiosity.
Ranked at 1.
Seriously.
Yeah, like, it would have been scarier than Halloween. Like... it kind of comes to something.
Scarier than the knife. Why has there not been like a parody of Halloween that combines that with Chernobyl? And actually, no, we have that. It's called Chernobyl Diaries, and it's absolutely awful. That was terrible.
And
don't watch that, obviously.
You know, it kind of comes from me to admit that something is scarier than like the OG Halloween film. But honestly, this is just. It doesn't like. This isn't by any means classed as horror, but for me, this is horror because of how truly awful this makes you feel, and like how annoyed you actually are the fact that this happened and what could have been done to prevent this. This tragedy happened and so many people were affected by it, and so many people still are affected by it because radiation is a thing that doesn't just go away. You know, you have everlasting effects from it, like cancer. You know, once you get that, you know, then there's not very much chance you're going to get rid of something like that in a go, because again, radiation has numerous effects on people, you know, birth defects, just breeding effects, everything, like absolutely everything. It affects everything, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So it makes it more scary, the fact that, like, you know, we're assured, you know, we have like new safety procedures in place if, you know, there was ever another meltdown. Get rid of nuclear, full stop, because look at the harm it did. Like, you can assume me all you want, I still don't like the idea of it. Horrifying.
Oh, for sure. This is already like this might be like my favorite episode that we've done with this entire podcast, because I just love the fact that we're both just gushing over something for once, as opposed to one of us. I love this. And you're like, yeah, it's all right.
You know, Evil Dead being the prime thing. You know, I really like the film. Regan comes along with that 2-star turd.
Yes, I did.
Like, you served me up a friggin' turd on a platter with that episode, man.
Yeah, I will always apologise for that, though, because I know how much it hurt.
It's fine. At least we are in total agreement with this one.
Yes, we are in total agreement that Chernobyl is just one of the best things, just full stop.
Oh, I really, 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 really want the score for this on vinyl. It's in my Amazon wish list. It's just sitting there waiting to be bought.
I dread to think how expensive it might be.
It's not actually that bad, to be honest. It's around the same price as like a normal LP. It's around like 20-25 quid.
That'd be funny though, because the actual score runtime's like 40 minutes.
Yeah, but again, like,
it's really short, so it better not be the same price.
Oh no! I think it actually comes on like coloured vinyl as well. Like it comes on like a sort of like. Is it many colours? No, it's I can't remember what it is, but it's sort of like a foggy kind of colour, like the cover of it, you know, where we got all the mist in the background, kind of that colour, I believe.
Great, it's grey.
Yeah, much like the entire series, it's pretty grey.
It's like a grey green.
It's, you know, pretty grey.
Oh god. Yeah, I don't think we need to do final thoughts on Chernobyl, because we've just spent the last hour.
I mean, you know, we can reiterate it, the fact that this is just like one of the best miniseries, period. Definitely the best miniseries I've seen. Easily.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, as I jokingly said at the beginning, I have not met anyone who doesn't like this. I'm yet to.
Yeah.
I'm sure I will at some point. And I'll get very, very angry. I'll just be like, excuse me, could you just listen to this instead? Or, excuse me, could you just watch it again? oh, right, you still didn't like it. Could you please watch it again? I'll just force it on everyone now. But yes, that is our many, many, many very happy thoughts. Well, say happy, positive thoughts on the miniseries Chernobyl. Thank you very much for listening to us kind of rambling a little bit, just because we're like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this bit as well. And this bit. And this bit. I nearly forgot about this bit. Every single bit. And keeping in with the Craig Mazin sort of support, next week we are finally, hopefully, talking about The Last of Us season 1. Episode 3 is going to make you cry, Dan. Spoilers. But yes, you can look forward to that next week. We are now properly back recording. Thank God, it's been way too long. I'm very much looking forward to that. So, as I say, thank you very much for listening. And until then, it's goodbye from Dan.
Ta-ra.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.